I'm planning a trip to this place called Soul City. It's a town here at the edge of North Carolina that exists on Google Maps, but is missing on many others. Back in the 70s, this was an ambitious and experimental town, built and led by Black Americans. A utopia on thousands of acres of former plantation land that would help them gain social and economic power.
It was the dream of one man, civil rights activist Floyd B. McKissick, who for a time found an unexpected ally, Republican President Richard Nixon. A lot of the town got built, a clinic and an industrial park. People started moving in, but the reason you don't see it on most maps today is because it doesn't exist like it was supposed to.
If you ride around today, you're going to see empty buildings, vacant buildings. But you have to remember that at one time they weren't vacant. We were rising, we rose up.
We were just getting there. We were just becoming viable. That's when the rug got pulled from underneath us.
So whatever happened to Soul City?
Floyd B. McKissick was a prolific civil rights activist. By the 1960s, he was the first Black law student at the University of North Carolina. He was an attorney defending activists arrested at protests. He led one of the most pivotal civil rights organizations in the U.S., and he was also one of the organizers of the iconic 1963 March on Washington. Here he is next to Martin Luther King. But McKissick believed progress for Black Americans had been slow and inadequate. So for years, he set his sights on one big idea.
What if there was an integrated town where everyone, especially racial minorities and the poor, could thrive? A planned community where Black Americans could chart a new path towards equality. He called it Soul City.
He was a soldier in World War II, and he'd seen cities getting rebuilt over in Europe after they were completely destroyed and demolished. And he was intrigued and fascinated by the way you could rebuild cities and rebuild communities.
That's McKissick's son.
I'm Floyd B. McKissick, Jr.
He's a former North Carolina senator and attorney, and was director of planning on the Soul City project.
Oh, I was extremely optimistic. I mean, I felt that Soul City represented new hope, new opportunity, something that could epitomize the American dream.
I mean, we lost King, we lost Kennedy, we lost another Kennedy, we lost Malcolm X. There were so many things happening around us that there was a reason to say, let's build ourselves an economy and live our lives another way.
That's Jane Ball-Groom, a native New Yorker who started working with McKissick in the late 1960s, back when his company, McKissick Enterprises, focused on bringing new Black-owned businesses to Harlem.
Are you in this photo?
This is me. It was a time of hope. We were hopeful that he could do anything he wanted to do.
Unlike groups like the Black Panther Party, which embraced distinctly socialist values,
All power to the people!
McKissick embraced the idea of Black capitalism to make his vision of Black power a reality.
That if capitalism existed in our country, that African Americans needed to be part of that economic mainstream. They deserved an opportunity to share in building their communities.
How do you get money? We're not born with it. We can build our own businesses.
McKissick's plan was for Soul City to foster industry, where the money would flow from businesses to the community. He also had expansive ideas of what the community would offer, like sports facilities, a pool, parks, a daycare, residential villages built beside churches, bike paths, a shopping area, housing for senior citizens, a health clinic known as Health Co. Inc., and Soul Tech One, a huge 73,000 square foot building designed to be an incubator for new industry that could bring 24,000 jobs. Your job would be no more than 10 minutes from your home. This would be a place where people of all ages, races, and religions work together. A city without prejudice, without poverty. A brand new, shining city. By the year 2000, they projected 50,000 residents.
But in order to build this new town from scratch, one that people and businesses would want to move to, McKissick needed funding and political support.
Luckily, by the late 1960s, the U.S. government was interested in moving people out of densely populated areas and into new towns with economic opportunities. In 1968, they launched a program under the Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, which would offer financial assistance to a select few proposals for new towns across the country. McKissick saw it as an opportunity to finally make Soul City happen. But to get access, he'd still need political allies. In 1968, he first pitched his idea to President Lyndon B. Johnson, but Johnson soon decided not to run for re-election. So McKissick took his idea to the new leading Democratic candidate for president, Robert F. Kennedy. Kennedy supported the project, but in June of 1968, he was assassinated. McKissick then made a calculated decision, one that was incredibly rare and controversial for Black activists at the time. He looked to Republican candidate Richard Nixon, who was favored to win the next election, and hoped that he would support his project.
It's about survival, and sometimes you have to learn how to play the game.
Later that year, Nixon won the election, and then did something surprising. He actually supported McKissick's dream of an anti-racist town. But why? The Republican Party looked a lot different back then. It was focused on appealing to the broadest possible number of voters. It's why we see Nixon's deeply conservative policies, including the start to the devastating war on drugs, alongside brief moments of liberal policies.
We have passed new laws to protect the environment. Tonight, I therefore propose a new family assistance. I am also proposing a major expansion of daycare centers.
It wasn't because Nixon necessarily cared about these policies. It was just part of the plan to diversify his base. And that meant seeking out Black activists, too.
One of the things that President Nixon supported and was intrigued by was his idea of Black capitalism and Black entrepreneurship. Soul City fit in neatly within that umbrella.
In 1969, McKissick Enterprises publicly announced plans for Soul City.
The former head of CORE, Floyd McKissick, offered an idea today
For creation of a black-built, black-owned town.
In this new town, persons will be able to control their own destinies.
McKissick said he anticipates federal aid in planning and developing the town.
In 1971, Soul City submitted a proposal to HUD for funding. Around that time, McKissick officially switched to the Republican Party and became one of the most prominent Black civil rights activists supporting Nixon's re-election. And by July 1972, his alliance with Nixon paid off. Soul City was chosen as one of only 13 proposals for HUD's New Towns program. McKissick Enterprises would receive $14 million in federal funding. It was the first development company, led by Black Americans, to create a new city with government funding. That didn't go down well with everyone. Soul City had critics. One of them was a newly elected North Carolina senator named Jesse Helms, a deeply conservative Republican and a segregationist with a long record against civil rights. He was opposed to Soul City being a part of the state from the start. He couldn't get in the way of federal support for the project, but he'll come up later in this story.
McKissick chose here in rural Warren County, North Carolina, to build it. It was thousands of acres of former plantation land with almost no existing infrastructure. But reclaiming this space was important.
Its history was significant, a community that represented the future and a land that represented the worst of our past, an old former plantation built by slaves.
We were coming out of what was so dark into another light of, this is possible for us now. We can be somebody in this country.
Warren County was also one of many areas in the American South that had experienced waves of outward migration over the past several decades. Black people moving from rural to urban areas in search of jobs. But Soul City was designed to create a reverse migration, moving people back to the South.
He said, we need to change the face of the rural South. He needed staff to go south. I said, I'll go. So I talked to my husband, and I said, well, I'll go for 2 weeks.
Jane was one of the first people to move here, and she never left.
I've been in Soul City since January 1970. We had young engineers just getting out of college, architects from all over England, Africa, certain places in the United States. Soul City was at that time literally a university on how to grow a town. We were all students.
By 1973, McKissick Enterprises finally broke ground.
finally construction. This was what became the Soul City Boulevard.
We took raw land that did not have water and sewer, did not have roads, and we had to really build that infrastructure. Our first major project was a regional water system that not only provided water to Soul City, but provided water to a region. It was the largest regional water system built in the state of North Carolina at that time. It continues to operate and function to this day.
Being around people who were involved with building was transformative. Everything was a clay dirt road. Seeing a tractor-trailer coming down on a Monday morning, hearing buzzsaws and smelling paint, and seeing old roads transferred into cement roads, like paved driveways, it was simply amazing. So you became tall. I'm 5 feet, but those days I was 5'7", because I knew I was somebody. To be young, gifted, and black. I was raised as a Negro child in Mount Vernon, New York, but to be a whole new persona, you become something else.
They also built out electric, a fire department, a park, and recreational facilities. They built out the health clinic, along with the massive Soltec 1 industrial park, which would become the new home of all of McKissick's planning operations, too. And they built the first of 3 planned residential villages, where Jane lives to this day.
But by the late 1970s, Soul City still had less than 200 residents, even though they'd projected thousands by then. And they had no real commitments from big businesses to move here, even though McKissick was trying to court companies like General Motors. McKissick had a vision, a team, and infrastructure. So where were the people?
1973 dramatized U.S. dependence on foreign oil.
We're in an energy crisis now.
We have at present an absolute shortage of natural gas.
In the 1970s, industries were hesitant to move or invest in new areas. This was a problem. Soul City was the only new town that was trying to build in a rural place that was truly freestanding. The other projects were coming up next to bigger urban areas that could provide jobs. There was also the question of its name. Even though Soul City repeatedly branded itself as a multiracial community, some believed it invoked the idea of an all-black town.
If there was a city that was, say, 70% white and about 30% black, people would think of that as a racially integrated community. In Soul City's case, if we had been 70% black and 30% white or mixed races, people would have thought of that as an all-black town.
Then there was Jesse Helms and his attacks on Soul City.
When have you ever heard of a senator fighting to stop the flow of funds into their states or into their districts? It's contrary to everything that one would logically think about. Those are the types of projects you would embrace. But Jesse Helms was to be candid, a segregationist who never repudiated his views.
His final attack came in 1975, when the country was still reeling from the aftermath of Watergate.
5 people have been arrested and charged with breaking into the headquarters of the Democratic National Committee.
The biggest White House scandal in a century, the Watergate scandal, broke wide open today.
I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
Helms capitalized on the scandal and the fact that McKissick and Soul City were tied to Nixon. He accused Soul City of various financial wrongdoings, repeatedly calling it a waste and a boondoggle. And Helms, along with another North Carolina congressman, demanded a federal audit on the project. That investigation froze HUD funds and progress for over a year.
It had kind of a killing impact on Soul City's reputation.
The Raleigh News and Observer wrote a series of articles on alleged mismanagement of funds at Soul City. They ran editorials, including cartoons of McKissick, that slowly destroyed public opinion.
They could not conceive of an African American development company going out there and having the expertise and capacity to build a new town. They thought there was fraud, they thought there was abuse, and all types of allegations were made.
By December 1975, a government audit cleared Soul City of any major wrongdoing. But it was too late.
I went to lunch one day. I was coming back into Soltec 1, into the parking lot, and one of the workers stopped me and says, "Jane, it's over." I said, "What do you mean it's over?" He said, "They've shut their project down."
The bad press had scared people and big business away. And in 1979, HUD pulled the plug. it would no longer fund Soul City.
Today, the Department of Housing and Urban Development said it's cutting its ties to Soul City, North Carolina.
There have been hopes that industry would come here. That never happened. That's why the government concluded the project would never make money.
I think racial prejudice is what makes people say we have failed.
I just don't know what we're going to do. I'm too old to move anyplace else. You know, I wouldn't like to move. We love at home here.
Without federal money and without industry here, this town will not survive.
McKissick couldn't fund the project on his own. He had to foreclose and sell off most of the land.
Today, you can still see a few remnants of what once was.
There's the church and the old HealthCo building. The clinic operated in the community for decades after Soul City shut down, but it's been closed for years and is now abandoned and overgrown with plants. And then there's Soltech 1. Today, it's been taken over by a new industry, a prison work complex.
It does not symbolically incorporate what my father would have thought of as providing a second chance for people. Soul City represented a second chance.
The remains of Soul City are a testament to what they were able to accomplish with little funding in short time.
Within a 7-year period of time, we had built the roads, the houses, the complexes. From nothing came a lot. We rose up, red clay, to what you see today.
The park, pool, and sports facilities still serve the community, as well as the roads and water infrastructure. Many of the homes along cul-de-sacs remain, though just a handful of the original Soul City residents still live there.
I didn't want to go back. I said, I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying right here.
Floyd McKissick also never gave up on this place. He lived here until his passing in 1991 and was laid to rest in Soul City near the home he and his family built. Though his dream was cut short, to his family and friends, this will always be a place that embodies possibility, not failure.
That's what Soul City is. It's about hope. It's about dreams. Did it become the reality that we envision? The answer is no. But can we learn from that? And can we think about what that symbolizes in terms of moving forward in America? The answer is absolutely yes.
Thanks for watching. I'm Ranjani, the producer of this episode. So one of the interesting things I learned while researching this history is that Warren County, where Soul City is, also made national news again in 1982 as the birthplace of the environmental justice movement. It's where Black residents led an iconic protest against the state's plan to place a toxic landfill in their community, and sparked a national movement against environmental racism that's still going today. Floyd McKissick was one of hundreds of protesters arrested. I'll put a few links about that history in the description below if you're interested. And before you go, I have a request. We pick stories like this for Missing Chapter to help as many people as possible have access to hidden history without a paywall. To help keep our journalism free and support more of our work, you can go to vox.com/give to make a contribution. We're gearing up for a big year full of ambitious projects and are looking to hit 85,000 total contributions by the end of 2023. So if you can, contribute at the link below to help us reach that goal. Thanks again for watching and supporting.